What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings Podcast studio. Today, I am very excited to be joined by somebody I would consider a legend in the comic book industry, a longtime comic book industry veteran, Mr. Mike Barron. How you doing today, Mike?
Doing good, James.
Awesome, man. Got to start right out talking about that Florida man hat. Is it appropriate? Are you the stereotypical Florida man that we see in those articles?
Oh, I hope not, but my creation, Gary Dubé, is. Are you aware of the Florida Man books that I've done?
You know, I am not. I'm more aware of like Badger and Nexus and that kind of stuff.
All right.
So you have a Florida man book?
Yeah, I got to burrow through my pile here. I'll show you a bunch of stuff.
Oh, my goodness.
We've been crowdfunding my books for the last 3 or 4 years. By me, I mean me, my artists, and Chris Brawley, who runs my campaign.
Oh, very cool.
I wouldn't be able to do any of this without Chris. And Florida Man was the first one. Jeez, I got so many here. We're getting there. Hang on. I was inspired, of course. Here we go.
Nice.
Well, this is the latest one. This is not the standard cover. But,
oh, my God. That's perfect.
Yeah, Florida Man versus Hogzilla. And I have a third one in the works, which is going to be even funnier. And, the funny thing is these are based on my novels.
Oh, cool.
And the Florida Man novels are by far my most popular novels. And people have written me that they're doing them on audio while they drive. He said I had to pull over to the side of the road. I was laughing so hard. I was crying. I couldn't see.
Well, I'm going to definitely check them out because I was not aware of those.
Yeah, I was reading it in bed, and my wife told me to get out because I was laughing out loud, and she couldn't sleep.
Now, are those that you said audio, are those available like on Audible and all those type of things?
Absolutely. They're on Amazon, the novels. These are audibles of the novel, obviously. The comic books are similar. There's some crossover with the novels, but the comic books are also unique, and that I put a lot of stuff in them when I'm writing that didn't appear in the novel.
Very cool. Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your beginning of your career and kind of what inspired you to get into the comic book industry. You're a very creative guy, obviously. So what was it when you were many, many years ago when you were first getting into it? What was the inspiration? Were you big into comics as a kid or very creative into writing, that type of stuff? How did you get your start?
I was just into one comic, Uncle Scrooge by Carl Barks. When I was a little kid, I read it, and even though I was not widely read, and I hadn't read a lot of comics, I got the sense that this was something exceptional. Everything clicked in that comic. The story, the art, the characterizations, the message. It was masterful. And rereading Barks over the years has only reinforced that message. And I would say that anybody who's interested in the art of comic books must read Carl Barks' Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck books because they are probably among the finest comics ever produced in terms of using the medium to maximum effect. Comics are what you make of them. They seem transparent. Everybody looks at a comic and says, well, I could do that. And they do, but it doesn't mean it's going to be any good. A comic is what you make of it. Carl Barks understood the form like nobody else. His stories are moving, they're touching, they're funny, they're sad. And the messages that he delivers, the epiphanies, are true to life. So I recommend, if you want to get into comics, you got to read Uncle Scrooge and study what he did. But don't study it too hard, because the other thing is you want to enjoy that book, and I guarantee you that you will.
Yeah. Now that's an interesting recommendation, because most of the time when people think of comics, they're going to think, oh, he's going to say like Superman, or, he's going to reference some Jack Kirby Fantastic Four, or tell you that's what you should go look at. So that's an interesting recommendation. It's cool that resonated with you so much.
Well, I did get into other comics as I got older. When I went to college, I was introduced to Steranko.
Oh, yeah.
When I saw his work on Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., my head exploded. I had never seen comic art like that before.
Yeah.
And then somebody introduced me to Neil Adams, and then I started collecting comics. And I would go to the comic shop regularly every week when the new titles came out, and I'd get what I wanted, take them home, and I would read them. I would gather them all up, and I'd read through all of them. In retrospect, many weren't that good. The art was always, well, not always, but for the most part, the art was much better than the stories. I'm not going to
Right.
mention what they were, but we're attracted to comics because of the art form. A lot of us are attracted to specific artists. When we look at that art, we see a powerful aesthetic appeals to us. Artists like Barry Smith or Bernie Wrightson or Jim Lee for that
Yeah.
matter. And there are, hundreds of artists who are working today that have that aesthetic, that attractive aesthetic. You say, holy shit, you look at that art, I need that book. But back in the day, books were 35 cents, 50 cents a buck. And
Yeah.
now they're $4 or $5, but inflation being what it is, it's still not that outrageous. But right now, corporate comics are circling the drain for any number of reasons. And one reason is that they've forgotten their main mission, which is to entertain.
Yes, for sure.
And that's my number one rule for anything I write, be it a novel or a comic. My first job is to entertain, and I never lose sight of it.
Now, what was the point that you realized this is something you wanted to pursue as a career?
Again, going back to my childhood, it was picking up a paperback by John D. MacDonald. I think it was the first Travis McGee story, The Deep Blue Goodbye. And I went out on the sidewalk, and I'm holding this paperback in my hand, and all of a sudden I thought, well, this guy's not writing this for his health. He's doing this for a living. He's writing for a living. That's what I want to do. So the seed was planted. And I traveled a long, circuitous route to get there. But I did get there eventually. I'm a slow learner, but I did get it eventually. Yeah, I always had a flair for comics, and that's why I broke into comics as easily as I did. And why the characters that I created are still with us today, and we're putting out new versions of them. And of course, I'm probably most famous for Nexus.
Yes, I just read that one, the 2 issues of that last night, because I was familiar with Kelsey Shannon's artwork, and when I realized that you had written that and he was on there, I went back and looked at him again.
Oh, thank you, James. I think Kelsey knocked it out of the park.
He really did, man. That guy's a little bit, in things I've seen with him, he's pretty modest about his work. He's phenomenal. I just love his stuff.
We do have a lot more Nexus in the works. I wish I could tell you who all's involved, but I can't yet. When I do, comic fans are going to be very excited.
Yeah, Nexus is such a unique character, and gosh, how long ago was it? Was that back in the early 80s that you...
1981.
81, okay. And circling back just a tiny bit before we get to that, when it comes to, because you mentioned you've written a lot of novels too, I'd be curious to know the similarities and differences between writing for comics versus writing a novel.
Well, it took me 30 years to learn how to write a novel, as I explained, because I'm a slow learner.
Right.
But when I get it, I get it.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. I had tried writing novels right out of college, and what I sat down and I just started writing.
Yeah.
And what happened was
oh, look at that. We got a screen share.
I wrote a couple of 1,000 words of horse shit that went nowhere, and I realized that I set it aside. And then I had a very difficult period in my life, about 10 years, where I couldn't earn any money writing. I took any job I could get, including janitor and unloading automobile bumpers.
Yeah.
And I moved from Wisconsin to Colorado. And after this very difficult period, I decided to return to writing again. I had an idea for a novel, and I was writing the novel, and I realized I get it. I understand now how a novel works. And what happens is I came to understand story. Well, what does that mean? Because a story is so many things, many things. go into a story. It's a dynamic narrative with a beginning, middle, and an end. And by dynamic, I mean things are always changing. Anybody who watches TV or reads novels knows what I mean. When you're watching TV, it's episodic, and the TV writers understand there are going to be commercial breaks. And so they write these scenes, which are designed to fit into like a 7 or a 12 or 14-minute span.
Right.
They end on a bit of a cliffhanger so that you'll come back after the commercial. And when you write a novel, a chapter has to have a natural ending where it seems appropriate and doesn't seem that the writer just stopped in mid-sentence and left things up in the air. You can leave things up in the air, but there's a way to do that with a sense of anticipation. So each chapter in a novel, ideally, especially in the type of novels I write, ends with the expectation of more, with the hint that we have to keep reading to find out what happens because we care. And that's the most important facet of any novel or comic book is the reader has to care before he turns the page. Well, how do you make the reader care? Well, there's an infinite number of ways, but I'm just going to catalog 3. Number 1, you have a fascinating character that the reader cares about. Sherlock Holmes comes to mind. He's the most popular fictional character in history. Number 2, you have a fascinating situation that people want to know more about. Jurassic Park comes immediately to mind. And number 3, you have a seductive narrative voice. That's harder to do in a comic than it is in straight fiction, but you can do it. People just like the way you write. They like the sound of the words, the musicality of the sentences. They want to keep going. A perfect example of that is Raymond Chandler, who created Philip Marlowe, who was one of the early hard-boiled detectives. And of course, Chandler created the phrase, "Down these mean streets a man must go who's neither mean nor suck," or whatever. But he had a flair for language. And the language was so much fun when he wrote it. They'd say, yeah, this is fun to read. And one of the things he wrote is, he was about as inconspicuous as a tarantula on angel food cake. And another one was, from 20 feet away, she looked like $1 million. From 10 feet away, she looked like a woman who'd been designed to be seen from 20 feet away.
Oh my God, those are all really great lines.
Yeah, and he drew hundreds of those. And that's one of the reasons people keep coming back to Chandler and so many other authors. At one end, you have what I call an artless narrative voice, and Michael Connelly is my best example for that. I love Connelly. I've read dozens of his books. He created the Detective Bosch and the Lincoln Lawyer. And when you're reading his book, you're not aware of the craft of his writing. You're not aware of it at all. But you're just completely immersed in the story, and you want to know what happens. He's invisible. And at the other end, you have somebody like Michael Chabon, who wrote The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, whose use of the language is so elegant and musical that you enjoy reading his words just like you're eating canapes or something.
So you've taken inspiration from a lot of these authors then and kind of blended everything and come up. It's got to be hard to come up with your own voice when you're writing, right? Like an artist coming up with their style can be a very difficult process. And like we're all an amalgamation of all these inspirations and influences that we've taken in. So for you, now, did you ever delve into art as well?
Yeah, I do for years and years. In fact, for 25 years, I wrote comics by drawing each page out by hand.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll show you one right now.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But as far as worried about an author's voice, I never did that, and nobody should. Don't worry about your author's voice. Just try to get the story down.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's how I wrote comics for 25 years.
Nice.
And for anybody who wants to create comics, I would say, do this. Do it. Whether you can draw or not, because it teaches you so much.
Well, it has to teach you how to present things to an artist if you are just writing a script and handing it off to an artist, because you find a lot of times, or at least I've noticed this, where a rookie writer to comics will kind of have idea of how they want to tell the story, but not realize that it's not always feasible for an artist to put all that stuff into the panels, and how a comic flows versus how you can write things for a movie script or a novel or something like that.
I no longer do that, but I will draw for an artist if I have to show them what I have in mind. I now write full script, but my scripts are very terse. I go through them and it's just what's necessary, which includes all the dialogue. It's a big mistake to hand a plot to an artist and say, here, you lay it out and I'll add the words when you're done.
Right.
Because the artist needs to know what the characters are saying so that he can characterize them accurately and correctly. And how he has to know what are the emotions here? What is the actor saying? I have to know what he's saying so that I can draw the face appropriately or the body language or whatever. The most important question in fiction is what happens next? Because if the reader doesn't care, he's not going to turn the page.
Exactly.
And one of the things about writing these comics by hand is when I began, I didn't outline. I'd have an idea. And I had the structure of the drama in my head, which is a beginning and a middle and an end, a dynamic narrative. But I would focus on the panel, the one panel, how it starts. And then when I had that panel down, I thought, what happens next? And that's the most important question in fiction. What happens next? So I didn't waste a lot of space on pictures for their own sake. And I still don't. I thought I was writing real loose when I was doing 6 panels a page. Now I do 5 panels a page. And sometimes that seems way too tight for me. Wait, it's too tight? Yeah, too tight. Too tight. Because I look at a lot of comics, like The Horseman. Chuck Dixon just came out with The Horseman, which is a new vigilante comic for the Rippaverse. And Chuck is fearless in doing one double-page spread after another. But one of the reasons he does it and can get away with it is these are huge, fascinating action pictures,
right?
That the artist goes crazy on, and you love looking at them. They're not like we've all seen comics where the artist draws one huge head on the page, and the head is saying like 75 words in 5 caption boxes, and when you come to that, the eyes glaze over because when you look at that page, this work. This isn't fun. I'm not gliding seamlessly through the story. Now I have to stop. Yeah. The art isn't very interesting. Besides, these captions are covering up the art. And the people who write the captions, they're not Shakespeare. I can't tell you how many times have we seen, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore in the comic. Have you ever seen that in the comic?
Yes.
Or
there's so many tropes like that.
Yeah. And, if you're original and you set a trope like that and it's original and it resonates, people are going to remember it. I have people repeating lines to me that I wrote 40 years ago all the time because they had the impact in the context, especially with the Badger, but also with Nexus too. That was a gag line. This calls for hyper speed. I put that in there and everybody thought it was a gag. So I've used it a couple of times and people repeat back. That's not Shakespeare either.
Right.
But there are phrases that live on because the first time they appeared, they had a tremendous impact, such as it's clobbering time or face a tiger, you just hit the jackpot. First time iconic. They appeared, it was just a perfect melding of pictures and words. And so they resonate over the years and you think them, but you have to resist the urge to regurgitate them. I have 3 rules when I write. Number 1 is just my job to entertain. And I never lose sight of that. I want every page, every panel to click and pop and draw the reader on. So you can't wait to find out what happens next. Number 2, show, don't tell. I mean, comics are a visual medium. And you advance the story visually as much as you can. Now, occasionally, you're going to have to advance it verbally when characters are discussing what they're going to do or outlining a situation. That's fine. Don't go overboard with it. And number 3 is to be original. What does that mean? Well, we're all unique human beings, and we necessarily bring our own experiences and attitudes to whatever it is that we write. But it's important for the author to imagine every point of view. If he limits himself to one character, and there are a lot of great books written in the first person, like all those Travis McGee novels. Everything we learn is relayed through Travis McGee's sensibilities, because he's telling us that he has a cosmopolitan worldview. So it's not like you're listening to some idiot. The other thing an author can do, I do this all the time, is I will jump around from point of view to point of view, from chapter to chapter, not in the same chapter. There's some people who can do that. It's hard to pull off. It's called an omniscient point of view, where within the space of the same chapter, you're describing events from several different points of view.
Yeah. Did they kind of do that in Game of Thrones? In those novels, because I had trouble. I think they did, because I remember trying to pick it up, and when the show was on, and the books were so hard to read because I couldn't keep track of which character was which, and who, because it was jumping around like that. It has to be very difficult to do as a writer.
Well, not if you're a master of it, like Kevin J. Anderson. Kevin writes the Dune novels and a lot of star-spanning fantasy and science fiction. But Kevin does not type. Kevin narrates everything into a recorder while he's climbing through the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, okay.
And he has somebody transcribe it, and then he edits what he's done there.
Wow.
But he's been at it for so long. I mean, Kevin's got 40 or 50 titles to his name, probably more as far as I know, that he's a master of that type of narration, so it works for him.
So for you prefer to do that from chapter to chapter, though, as far as if you're going to switch the point of view.
A close personal point of view, which means that each chapter is narrated from one point of view and nobody else, and we get their reactions depending on who they are. Yeah, I had a thought there, but...
No, it's all good. So going back, before I forget, I wanted to go back to what you described with the big talking head on the page and all the words. Like, I noticed, and other people have noticed this too, but comics hit a point there back probably in the mid 2000s, maybe even a little before, where I saw this shift where it was like things got way more wordy and less about the art, and like 20 panels of talking heads and things. What do you think contributed to that shift? Was it because you mentioned the importance of the art and it being exciting, and you as the writer having a understanding of the importance of that. But comics kind of got away from that for a little bit, and I don't know that it's fully come back from it either.
Well, what happens is people don't know how to write. They have no idea how to use the medium. And a lot of them have no interest in entertainment. Remember, that's job number one. If you're not entertaining people, they're not going to read the book or watch the movie. And you can deliver a powerful social message if first you entertain. I always think of To Kill a Mockingbird and The Grapes of Wrath. They're proof of that. And there's any number of modern novels that are proof of that. But if you just come in with a chip on your shoulder and an agenda, and you say, I'm going to use this comic to stick it to this group or that group, I'm going to stick it to the cisgendered white man, I'm going to show him, you've doomed yourself before you start, because you forgot the first rule of writing what we write, which is entertain. And well, how do you entertain? And I gave you some examples of that.
Yeah.
When I write a comic, I have a bag of gold coins, and each coin is a word. And maybe I have 500 gold coins in that. And I spend them cheaply as I can. I'm like Uncle Scrooge. I hate to use them, but I do, because words are necessary. Wordless comics are no good. You fly through them, and the art may be stunning, but you forget them the next day because there's no context. There's that it's clobbering time moment. There's no language that resonates. Now, when I run out of those 500 words and I find that I have to spend more words, the next words I spend are stainless steel.
Right.
And when I run out of the stainless steel, the next words I spend are lead. I don't ever want to do that because lead words are what we see all over modern comics all the time, mostly in the form of lectures. And nobody wants a lecture. You don't go to a movie to be lectured or read a book to be lectured unless it's a factual book. It's not designed to entertain.
Exactly.
But even people who write scholarly books, the ones that succeed are the ones who understand the narrative voice, have a way of telling you history that's entertaining. I've read so many straight history books that I couldn't put down because they're relating fascinating events and because the person who wrote them knows how to write.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. So in your career, you've got to collaborate with a lot of different creators. Are there some that stand out in your mind? Like, I mean, I'm sure there are. I ask these things as if I don't know them, for the audience, but I know some of the creators, who they are that you've worked with, and they're pretty iconic. So what are some of them that really stand out to you, that you're really proud of the work you guys did together?
Well, Steve Rude, for starters. I mean, it was a stroke of luck running into him. It was a stroke of luck that we were in the right place at the right time with people who wanted to publish a superhero comic. But the dude's art was and is very powerful and compelling.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of the reason Nexus succeeded. Likewise, in Badger, I lucked out with having Jeffrey Butler as my first artist. And I've worked with many artists on the Badger. Jeff Butler stands out. Bill Reinhold, I think, is the archetypal Badger artist for me. He drew more issues than anyone else. A lot of great artists that worked on it. There are too many to name.
Yeah, I figured.
But those are a couple,
So how did the character of Nexus develop? Like, how did you and Steve kind of collaborate on that and develop that concept together?
Well, I developed it. I went home and they said they wanted a superhero, and I wanted to do a science fiction story. And the first thing that occurred to me was, what if somebody died every time he showed up? And that's not a fresh thought. It's the reason that popular entertainment has been dominated by police, private eye, medical, and legal shows for the past half century, because they deal with matters of life and death, and that's the stuff of drama. I wanted to make him an assassin, but I wanted him to be sympathetic. So I made him a reluctant executioner of mass murderers. And as soon as I thought of that, I started to think of the backstory. How did he get this way?
Yeah.
I wrote Nexus by drawing the first 12 pages out by hand and handing them to the dude. He took them home, he penciled them, he inked them, he lettered them. We showed them to the boys at Capitol, and they said, all right, now we need 20 more pages. And we were off and running. That's how it happened. And again, that's how I wrote comics for like 25 years.
Now the dude, he's still dabbling in he's been trying to get that Nexus animated thing going for a long time now. Yeah, I mean, he's put so much of his heart and soul into that. And it's tough. He's got like the whole lookbook and everything and all of that. Like, what are the challenges of getting something like that picked up for a different medium? Like, obviously there's a lot of challenges, or it would have been, that would have happened by now. He wouldn't still be working on it all these years later.
Well, he's working on it. I'm not. I mean, we're both doing our own versions of the book. Have you seen the documentary Rude Dude?
I have not. I've been following his YouTube channel for a while now, but I haven't seen the documentary yet.
Well, I recommend you watch it. It'll give you some insight into his process. I think it's on some streaming service. It's called Rude Dude.
I will watch it for sure. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his work. I kind of came across him because I'm such a Jack Kirby fanatic, and so I came across some of his videos where he was talking about Jack, and so I've been following his live streams and things. So vaguely familiar with a little bit, but I would love to watch the documentary and learn more for sure. So how has the industry changed since you got into it. I think we've touched on a few ways it's changed, but it's a different world. Like one of the things I always bring up is I notice that I don't see like a pair of creators on a run of a book very often anymore, like a significant run of many issues. That's one of the biggest changes that I've noticed. What are some things that you've kind of picked up on over the years that differ from when you were earlier in your career?
Well, as you know, the traditional comic industry is in serious trouble. Marvel and DC are circling the drain for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is the rise of the internet, and because I think we have a whole generation of kids here who just don't read. I mean,
Yeah, very true.
they'll watch movies or they'll play video games. And for the
Or
longest time,
a condensed, 30 to 60-second clip on Instagram or something. Yeah.
yeah. The fact is that, well, that's one reason. Number two is the distribution system. They're not selling as many books because of the rise of the internet, but also because most of the books they put out are unlikable. They're unpalatable. Nobody wants to read them. I don't read them myself, but I see the pages that my friends post on X all the time from the latest Harley Quinn. I mean, the latest comic is all about her farting. I couldn't believe it. I think this whole comic, the Harley Quinn farting, and the other comics they put out with these the race swapping and the girl bosses lecturing, and as I said, nobody buys a comic to be lectured. They want to be entertained. They've lost sight of that. Now there are probably still some corporate comics that are entertaining. I don't know. But on the other side, in the negative zone, where we crowdfund our own books, it's more lively than ever. A lot of people are making a good living crowdfunding. A lot more are taking a bath. And the reason they're taking a bath is any number of reasons, but the main reason is that their books are not very good. You have to, if you're charging $25 for a book, you have to put out an entertaining, memorable, haunting story. When the person puts that down and says, holy shit, that was good, I'm going to read that again. And only a handful of books succeed at doing that.
Now, you've done a lot of crowdfunding for your projects now. Do you mainly do that through Kickstarter?
We use every crowdfunding platform that we can, including Indiegogo and Fund My Comic. And of course, we put this out last year.
Oh, there you go, Bronze Star.
And Pat Broderick is working on the sequel right now. Everybody who's seen this book has been stunned because this is the greatest work of Pat Broderick's career.
So,
and to produce it at his age.
Oh man, that's amazing.
It's just stunning. It's so great that we put out an oversized black and white version so you can see the ink that he puts down on the page. It's just stupefying how great it is. And we're very excited about the next issue that's coming on.
I'm guessing you have a lot more creative freedom when you're in there doing your own thing on Kickstarter.
That's true.
It's like you said, though, like the challenge is making sure you deliver. If you are, asking somebody to contribute to it and everything, like, if anything, I would guess you're trying to over deliver.
Well, it's not that. It's just that when I do a story, I want that story to have an impact. I want it to click and pop on every page. I don't want a wasted panel or word anywhere in it. And I think back to Uncle Scrooge for that.
Yeah.
And so I work on these things to make them resonate. And by that, I mean, you can't wait to see what happens next because you care about the characters. The art is great and the story grabs you by the throat. And that's my goal. So I work on these scripts a lot and they're much longer. And one reason I say we're charging $25. Well, one of the reasons is that the stories are 72 pages long, but more importantly, the stories are unforgettable and wildly entertaining. It's hard to achieve when you don't know what you're doing. But at this stage, I do know what I'm doing. And I have to say that every time I look at anything I've written, whether it's a comic or a novel, I find a way to improve it by taking words out.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing I noticed too with really high level artists. It's not so much like all the things they put in, it's the things they leave out that really create great art. And that's a crazy skill to have.
I created Private American because I was so disgusted with what Marvel had done to the Punisher. By the way, folks, all these books are available at my store, baroncomics.com. baroncomics.com.
Awesome.
Baron with one R. I don't know why I have to say that. A lot of people
Speaking back to what we talked about the industry changes and everything, given the shift in the industry and the rise in crowdfunding options being available to creators, what would be some, like parting advice you would give to aspiring writers and artists who are trying to find their way into industry and kind of, they're being provided with a lot of different options. It's not like back in the day where you had Marvel and DC to submit your work to and hope that you get in. Like, there's a lot more options available. So what advice would you give a up and coming creator that's trying to break in?
Well, there's a lot of advice. I already mentioned one thing is to try drawing the pages out by hand. That'll help you understand the medium. Number two, it's important to get published, to get some recognition and some justification. And the best way to do that is to write short stories. There's a huge market for short stories out there of every stripe and persuasion. But particularly science fiction, horror, and crime. If you go online, you search for online short story magazines, you're going to get more than you can possibly handle. And the beauty of a short story is you can write a short story in a day or 2 days. You get it all done, and you can send it in. And if you're any luck, even if they don't buy it, they'll give you a little feedback. But if you are lucky and you know how to write, they'll buy it and they'll give you a few bucks. And you can start feeding that, because the more you write, the better you get. So, one, draw your pages out by hand. Two, try your luck at short stories. And three, and I hate to say this, if you're going to do a superhero comic, you have to be original. I've been seeing so many superhero comics that are just like laughless parodies of everything that came before, because people stick to these tropes, and instead of using original language, they're just recycling Stan Lee. I got a panel here of Doc Doom. I'm gonna bring that up because
share it.
Well, I don't know if I can share it, but
okay,
maybe I can. But what I want to do is I want to give you the dialogue that's in it.
Okay. Yeah, and this is why I encourage everybody to watch the video version of the podcast, because we always share like awesome stuff like this as far as screen shares, and Mike's been holding up all sorts of cool books that he's done and his friends have done. So make sure you guys check it out.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I can do? I know what I can do here. I will put it on my X page and everybody will be able to, hey, can you see that? No, you can't see that.
No, not yet.
All right.
It might let you screen share your browser or your desktop.
I just learned how to do this, so it's way beyond my...
Let's not push it, right?
All right. Yeah. Here we go. All right.
Oh, there it is.
Now this is an example of how not to write. There's Doc Doom. He says, "Then turn and stare in abject awe at Doom the First, the new ruler of the world." Now, I can't tell you how awful that is.
Yeah.
But there it is,
There we have it, right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to artists who do not write, that are trying to break in? Would you encourage them to try to come up with their own ideas, even if
No,
their goal is to be an artist? Should they be trying to write short stories and things, or
if
should
they
they
have
be
the
more
urge, if
focused?
they have the urge, it sure worked out for a bunch of people, like the Ninja Turtle boys and Mike Mignola with Hellboy sure worked out for them.
Yeah,
But most people don't have that flair for a memorable character. And what they should do is they should work on their art, and they should get a script from a friend. Everybody must know some writer and say, "Would you write me a one-page script
yeah,
so that I can try my hand at continuity?" And that's how you can get started. If I see an artist I like and he's interested in working with me, and all I see are beautiful full page images, like could be used for a cover or something, I say, "Have you done any continuity?" And they say no. And I said, "Well, are you interested in doing continuity?" And if they say yes, I'll give them a page of script or something.
right.
But if they're not, I'll keep them in mind for a pinup or a cover. I'm
You want to
interested in,
see sequential storytelling,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, not just pinups and cover stuff. So I know you have another interview that you're going to be popping on here in a bit. I want to give you a chance to have the stage now and let everybody know all the different places they can follow you. Share your website again. I'll make sure to put all this in the show notes for everybody. I want to make sure everybody goes out and shows their support. So the spotlight is yours, sir. Let everybody know.
Okay, let me see if I can get this. First of all, baroncomics.com. Can you see that?
Not yet. Not yet. I think you
Oh,
got to do your screen share again.
no, it's just beyond me. Also, I have a Substack column, mikebaron.substack.com. Just go to Substack and you type in my name, it'll take you to. It's wildly entertaining. I talk a lot about writing. I talk a lot about popular culture. I have a YouTube channel, Mike Baron YouTube. Uh, it's pretty obvious which one is mine. There are a couple of Mike Barons on YouTube. I'm the only one with Mike Baron, Baron, 1OR. And it's all tutorials about how to write. And you'll see
Oh,
them lined
amazing.
up there. And please go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We have a mailing list for baroncomics.com. And if you just get me your email, I'll add it to the mailing list. You can get me on X at Bloody Red Baron, X at Bloody Red Baron, and on Facebook, I'm Michael A. Baron. I also have the comics and novels of Mike Baron on Facebook.
Awesome. And any projects in the works that you can talk about that you want to let everybody know about? I'm assuming you will show them. They'll be on your website and your social media, but anything you got in the works that you're excited about?
Oh, I just turned in my second tenure novel. We were just talking about that. It's like, it's a vigilante story in the classic mode, except it's about a university professor who refuses to use a student's preferred pronoun and how it
Uh-oh.
destroys his life. We
You're
were
not
just
going to
talking
get any
about
heat
that.
over that at all.
Blame Pardo into the idea. But I have so many things in the works. As you know, Sherlock Holmes Leviathan is my latest project, and you can still order it at baroncomics.com or at Fund My Comic. And in it, Sherlock Holmes teams up with Captain Nemo to prevent World War.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and I'm going to try and give you the cover to that, too, because I'd like you to see it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
The cover is kind of famous by now, so people have seen it.
There it is. Beautiful.
Yeah, and that's Richard Bonk's art, and Richard just exploded on this book.
Yeah, it looks great. Very exciting. Well, listen, I won't keep you much longer. We didn't even get a chance to talk about Guy Dorian Sr., which was the person who my friend Guy recommended I reach out to you. Had nothing but good things to say. So I think I'm going to have you on again in the future so we can talk all about Mr. Guy Dorian.
Oh, well, yeah, I would love to. And I would also love to work with Guy, and we've been talking about it for years.
You know what we should do? We should do because him and Ian, they were my first returning guests on here, so they've been on here. Each of them's been on here twice. Once of them, with them both together, and then once separate. We should get one on here where we have both you and Guy on at the same time. That could be pretty fun.
You bet. James, send me a link to this show, will you?
I will for sure. And hang out with me for a moment while I do my little spiel and let everybody know. Make sure you guys go on, like, subscribe, follow, all those good things. YouTube.com/@NerdyMewzings. You can find the podcast on all major podcast platforms. Mr. Barron, thanks for being with me today. I'm going to hit the outro. Everyone, keep it nerdy.